Fresh out of Austria, episode 38, Red Bull Ring review. Keelan, how are you doing?
Leo, hello once again, and hello everybody else. Like Leo said, we are straight out of Spielberg. We are back from Austria, from the Austrian Grand Prix. And what a weekend it was, Leo. We had, like always, we had some great racing. We had some controversy with a capital C. And we are going to get into all of it in depth, as always. Looking forward to breaking it down, my friend. Happy to be back.
Yeah, I'm quite literally straight out of Austria because I attended the race live. And I would like to talk a little bit about it because not every race is a race where I go.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a good Grand Prix to attend. I mean, they know what they're doing more or less from top to bottom, and it's just amazing. Everybody who wants to go to Austria someday, do it because it's a great event. I mean, I talked with the guys from the Elbows Down GP podcast. They asked me to attend, and it's not the same podcast as the Now Motor News Elbow Down podcast. That frankly, they didn't know about it, so I told them, and I don't know if they will change their name or keep it. But those two guys were very kind, and they asked me to join, and we talked a lot about the experience in Austria. So be sure to check this one out. And yeah, I would still like to elaborate a little bit on this one because Austria is a very good event. I kind of accidentally went to Austria in 2021 because I worked for a company and they had free tickets. So I thought, okay, this double header, free MotoGP tickets, I will go. And I drove down there. I spent a week and a couple of days in Austria. And it's just amazing. It was so good that I came back in 22 and now came back in 23. It's a very nice Grand Prix to attend. We were in the general admission at right next to the T3 grandstand, which is like the Schönberg straight, like out of turn 3 into turn 4, this general admission area there. And you stand on top of the hill and you see basically the whole track. We saw the turn 1 incident between Jorge Martin and half of the field. We saw the Jorge Martin and Luca Marini incident, and we saw them accelerating out of turn 3. And quite interestingly, the nice thing about going to a race live is that you can see one specific spot of the racetrack very well. So, for example, the acceleration. And I noticed everybody has a ride-height device except the Yamaha. I mean, I'm pretty sure they have one, but it's not functioning pretty well because you can really see the KTM and the Ducati and even the Honda squatting down and the Aprilia. But the Yamaha looks like a Moto 2 bike from the ride height perspective. So it's very odd. I made a video on my phone. I will post this maybe. And it's incredible because you see those things you don't really see on TV. And all the organization, like the way the parking is organized. You have to walk quite a lot. And in this heat, it was exhausting because the sun was boiling us and it was crazy. It was worse than in Jerez. And we were standing there with our umbrella, sunglasses, hat, and all sunscreen applied, and it still was too warm. It was crazy.
I would have died.
Yeah. I mean, the nice thing was we were at the general admission, so we could stand under a tree between sessions, and where you don't see shit, but it's in the shadow, so you can rest there and then go to a place where you can see everything whenever the session starts, which is quite nice. And on the grandstands, you basically, yes, you can leave, but it's a different experience to be on the grandstand. And I mean, everything was so nice. We parked the car on Saturday in the official parking spots and walked up to turn 3, which was a pain in the ass because you had to walk like the old layout, which is now a parking lot. And on Sunday, I organized a parking place right next to T3 because I made a deal with a person who has like who has some land right next to the track. So I made a deal that I could park my car there for like 10 euros, and then we were very, very fortunate that this one worked out. But obviously, not everybody can do this, and I was quite lucky that we managed to pull this off.
You bribed an Austrian farmer to park at T3.
No, it wasn't a farmer. It was like a very, very kind woman, and yeah. So,
Oh.
and 10 euros is fully okay. I'm very, very good with it. But yeah, like except all the walking, it was great. And if you're at turn one or like the Red Bull Grandstand, you don't have to walk so much. So we slept at a campsite like 25 minutes away from the track, because like the campsite's at the track, it's all party all night, and yeah, it's not necessarily my cup of tea. So yeah, I stayed there. It was nice, and you have to kind of know the area. And shout out to Maddie Patterson. She formerly Maddie Scordia. I still think Scordia all the time, but yeah, Maddie Patterson now. She invited me to her camp last year, and we stayed at this camp this year again. And it's so quiet, and we never thought about it until she brought it up, and then we realized how good this is, because it's very quiet and it's cheap. We paid like 24 euros now for 2 nights for two persons, and at the track you have to pay, I believe, 25 euros per car, and then 25 euros per person per night. So if you're
Jesus.
staying 2 nights with one car and two persons, you have 100 euros, and then 25 for the car. So 125 euros for 2 nights, and basically can stay in a hotel then. So yeah, you have to want the camping stuff, but I didn't. So I mean, fair play to everybody who wants to experience the camp, but it's party all night, and it's like the typical camping area, at a
Leo,
track.
we've all seen you watching MotoGP in the rave, alright? You're not lying to anybody here. We've seen you at the club watching the bike racing.
Yeah, I mean, this one was a strange one, because my girlfriend, she bought tickets to this show. It was Don't Let Daddy Know in Amsterdam. And she bought it in 2020 before the pandemic hit. And then the pandemic came, and now, then 3 years later, basically, they finally redid the event, and she had the tickets. So I went with her. And coincidentally, World Superbike was in Indonesia at this weekend. So that's where this legendary video comes from.
Oh man, still one of my favorite videos you've ever done, by the way. Just casually watching the sprint race in the middle of a rave. That's the greatest thing ever.
Yeah, but back to the Austrian GP, very, very nice. You had free toilets there, which is a massive upgrade over Assen.
Mm-hmm.
You had people behaving very, very well, which is an upgrade to Assen.
Mm-hmm.
And you had like free tap water you could drink there, not in the toilet, but there was a separate area where you could get free water, and everything was very, very nice. So
Well, that's great. I'm glad you had such a great time. And, obviously, hospitality and attending races has been a big issue on our podcast. We've talked about this extensively, especially last year with Assen. So it's really great to know that people know that they can go to Austria and have such a great time, and that it's so well organized and all these kind of things. So glad you had such a great time.
yeah,
And I will
and
go next year.
hit me up then. Because it's like a 10-hour drive. It's super exhausting, but once you're there, I mean, it's so much better than Assen that it's worth the drive.
Mm.
Assen is like 2 or 3 hours, and while Superbike and MotoGP is a total different world in Assen. I mean, they still behave a little bit like animals in World Superbike in Assen, but it's just the Dutch people, I guess. So, and not all of them. I mean, I'm not shitting on all of them, just some of them.
Hello,
But
Dutchie.
but in World Superbike, everything is way more like a family atmosphere. While MotoGP in Assen have this big festival over there and all the drunk idiots. But yeah, different topic. So the race in Austria is very well organized. I could recommend to everybody to sort out your accommodation and really dig into where you get the best money for your the best value for your money,
Mhm.
because the hotels are quite expensive. Like at the track, I checked 3 years ago, or like 2 years ago, when I went there first in 2021. And
Mhm.
since then, I just camped on those campsites like 30 or 25 minutes away from the track, because it's just cheaper and I don't care. I mean, they have a toilet there, they have a shower there, and that's basically all I need. So, yeah, but if you want to stay in a hotel, you should dig a little bit, because yeah, it's not necessarily the best infrastructure there for hotels, at least like 2 years ago. I don't know if it changed. So, yeah, and you should have a rental car if you fly, because it's in buttfuck nowhere. I mean, Spielberg is really in buttfuck nowhere. It's in the middle of the Alps, and in Styria, there's nothing. I mean, if you can get to the villages around there, it's good, but even that is difficult with public transportation. But then they have like a shuttle service which brings you to the racetrack, which is nice. So,
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we joke and we have a good time on the Bad MotoGP podcast, but we also offer real world life advice. And to be fair, on a serious note, that is great advice, and I'm glad you're giving it to the people because, I see people asking questions all the time about, I want to go to a MotoGP race. Which is the best race to go to? If I go to Mugello, if I go to Austria, am I going to be able to get there? Is it good? Is it organized? Is it safe? And, we've seen bad examples like Assen, I think it's fair to say, but we've
Portugal.
also, yeah, Portugal as well, you've also talked about. But I think it's really good for people to know that there are great examples out there, and there are examples where it's easy, well, not easy to get to, but when you get there, it's well run, it's organized, it's enjoyable. And I think it's really good that people should know that as well.
Yeah. I mean, I could totally recommend Jerez. I can recommend Valencia. I can recommend Austria, and I can recommend Misano. Those four races are really, really good. And Assen and Portugal are not the best races to attend for different reasons. But I mean, the Spanish people, they know how to organize a race, and I'm quite confident that Catalonia will be a great experience as well. But
Oh,
I
I bet it
haven't
will be.
experienced it. And then the Italians, I mean, it's not as well organized as Austria and Spain, like from top to bottom. You still get a little bit of chaos here and there, but I feel like that's just Italy. You have to live with it. But in general, it was a great experience. You could park more or less in at the track, and then you walk there, and everything is fine. I mean, nobody was getting on your nerves, and everything was more or less fine. In Italy, it was just like a bit more chaotic than Spain, for example. Spain is pretty organized and it's very well done, but I don't know how Mugello is. Maybe it's different. I don't know. But and also like Spa-Francorchamps in Formula One, we went there in 2021, which was this chaotic rain race, and that's like a different story. It was just a shit show, but Spa also is like in buttfuck nowhere, and the whole infrastructure is back from the 50s or whatsoever. We
Mhm.
were parking on the fields from some farmers, and then it was raining all the time. Everybody was stuck, and before the race, there was this huge traffic jam where I mean, I'm not over exaggerating, but you were in traffic for like 5 hours, and it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy because the infrastructure is not built for the amount of people who want to go to Spa. It's a great racetrack, but the infrastructure around it is just catastrophic. And with these numbers Formula One is pulling, it's even worse. I mean, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy how the whole infrastructure doesn't hold up. I mean, it's just normal roads and no parking spaces, just villages over there. And then it was raining all the time, so everybody was stuck in those on those fields, and some tractors had to pull them out of it. It was crazy. I mean, it was hands down the worst thing I ever experienced because I was freezing all the time. Then it was just those two laps behind the safety car, and everything around it wasn't particularly good as well. So, but yeah, that's a different story. But for MotoGP races, if you want to go to Austria, it's great. If you want to go to Misano, it's great. If you want to go to Jerez, it's great. Did I forget anything? Valencia. Valencia is also very good, even though the city is smelling like piss, honestly.
Jesus, Leo, are you just out to offend all of Europe this evening?
Yeah, I mean, Valencia has some nice spots, but it's not necessarily the go to city if you want to see a beautiful city. Let's put it this way.
That's a very diplomatic way of putting it. I can't really
But
be mad.
it was great because we attended the race where Remy won the world championship, and Valencia is a great circuit. We were standing between turn 2 and turn 6, like right next to this kind of omega thing where it goes in and out. And yeah, you can see the whole track. Like the only thing we didn't see was the start finish straight, but from the first corner to the last corner, you could see everything, and it was very, very, very nice. You could park right next to the track, and you don't have to pay for parking like you did in Portugal, and everything was so nice. You had to walk 5 minutes, and you were at the track.
I mean, it sounds unbelievable. I mean, for my part, and I know people are going to hate me for this, and I probably deserve it, but I actually haven't had the chance to go to a MotoGP race yet in my life or in my career. That will change soon, hopefully. I have to say, I'd love to do one of the international races like Motegi or Phillip Island. You know, Phillip Island's my dream race. I'm that stupid, Leo. I would go to Australia just to go to Phillip Island for the weekend. I would absolutely do that. But yeah, I'll actually have a think about it. It'd be cool to do some bad MotoGP content at the races. One day we'll make it work. But yes, from next season, I will try and go to more races, and that is a promise.
Yeah. I mean, the thing with content is a little bit difficult if you want to involve somebody who is like in the paddock because it's their work. So, for example, I talked with Simon Crafer on the podcast to do the Q&A later, and we thought about Austria, but then it's so stressful to attend a race even, and then also to have somebody who works there to make some free time for you. It's super hectic. It's super stressful for everybody. And yeah, it's better to meet people outside of races. So I didn't even want to bother Simon because I was pretty stressed all the time because we had to organize everything, and I guess he was too. So that's the reason why we didn't film our Q&A, but it's still at in the back of my mind that we will do it someday. And yeah, then you get the Q&A with Simon Crafer, which you got promised.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're waiting for the day, Leo. We're waiting for the day.
The thing with the races, I thought watching it live that MotoGP and Moto2 were extremely boring.
Not
I
mad at
mean,
that.
I watched the MotoGP race at the broadcast later because I wanted to rewatch it, and in the broadcast they did a very good job of bringing out the action where it was. But like, for example, the whole Marco Bezzecchi Alex Marquez battle on the broadcast, it was phenomenal. But like, you don't see half of it when you're at the track. All you see is this gap closing and closing and closing, and you know, okay, he's gonna overtake him. So it takes a little bit out the fun out. But Moto 3 was awesome and absolutely crazy. I love this category.
Moto 3 might be the single most goated category in motorsport racing anywhere. It is just absolute carnage every single weekend, and I love it dearly for that. So, you know what? Shout out of the week goes to Moto 3 for always being amazing.
When was the last boring Moto 3 race?
I don't recall. Maybe back in the 125 days?
No, there were races where like Joan Mir or Danny Kent headed the fuck out in Germany. And Dennis Önchi won his first race in Germany, right?
Yeah, I think it was
Yeah,
Germany.
so this year it was fun, if I remember correctly. But even like the Moto 2 thing, Peter was leading all the time, and you think like, oh my god, it's it's just nothing happening this year. So then Vietti closed, and then again you saw this gap closing and closing and closing, and then it wasn't a surprise when he overtook him. And yeah, I mean, I would have expected a little bit more out of the races, but the whole experience was great, and I think Austria is a very, very good race to attend.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll try and go next year if I can. I don't see why I shouldn't be able to. Yeah, I'd love to experience Austria. Beautiful country, beautiful racetrack, beautiful racing action as well. So what's not to love?
Yeah. Also, GP Sillies, she went to Austria and experienced everything.
Oh,
So,
Jen was there.
yeah, maybe I'll
Oh,
do a podcast with her again and to talk about everything in Austria.
shout out Jen from GP Sillies, by the way.
Yes, she's a lovely person. And she already appeared on my podcast. So, go check that one out if you have missed it.
Hell
It
of an
was,
episode, ladies and gentlemen. Go and watch it if you haven't already.
yeah, it was in the middle of the night. It was a pain in the ass with the time difference. But I mean, it was worth it. She's nice.
Yeah, it's worth getting up at stupid o'clock in the morning when you're getting that kind of content.
Yes.
All about the
And
content, baby.
the thing which annoyed me the most was that Jorge Martin and his long lap penalty were basically decided so much later.
Yes.
Because we had the sprint race and he fucked up in the sprint race. And if the
Yes.
stewards decide he fucked up,
Mm-hmm.
then he should get a penalty. I mean, that he doesn't see the blame on him and he blames other riders, that's a different story. It's like turn one chaos. I don't know if it's necessary to punish a rider within this chaos because there are so many factors. But then again, he was kind of dive bombing,
He
kind
dive
of.
bomb half the grid.
Yeah, but it was a. He said it was a very unfortunate situation because many things came together. But I mean, Maverick Vinales, what is he supposed to do? And Fabio again, what's he supposed to do? And to put the blame on them is kind of questionable. But what annoyed me the most, and once again, we're not talking about the races, we're talking about the stewards. I'm fucking sick of it. It annoys me so much that they don't make a decision during the sprint race when we had enough time. But then it felt like from outside pressure, they gave him a penalty and made him do the long lap. I mean, if you have the balls to say no penalty, then stick by it, you know? Because it feels like they watched it, thought, oh, no penalty, everything's fine. He bowled half the grid out, but everything's fine. So, okay. Then they saw the Jorge Martin and Luca Marini incident and think, okay, that's fine as well. No penalty. Then they hop on Twitter and see the shitstorm what's going on, and then they decide maybe we should give him a penalty to give the people what they want. It's not a way to govern a MotoGP race. I mean, if you make a decision, stick by it. The consistency thing is a whole different story now. To punish Fabio and Frankie in Jerez for more or less the same, and not punish Jorge Martin is kind of ridiculous. Even though I still believe that this whole thing with Fabio and Frankie and Jerez was also very, very difficult to judge. And I also think that that Spielberg was difficult to judge. I mean, yes, Jorge Martin kind of was very late on the brakes, and I think he tried to make up for his mistake in qualifying. But yeah, I don't know. Some people say black flag, other people say it's not his fault. So it's very difficult to judge. That's all I'm saying. And I'm not saying my opinion is he shouldn't get penalized, but my opinion definitely isn't he should get black flagged. And I'm more or less at a position where I think I don't necessarily know what really went wrong and what not. But what annoyed me so much is that the stewards don't know what they're doing, and they are ruining the whole races, because now Jorge Martin had to serve a long lap penalty at a race where he did nothing wrong. Give him the long lap penalty during the sprint race. You had enough time from the first lap to lap, what was it, 12, 14, whatsoever, I don't know, to sort this out and give him a penalty. But they don't know what they're doing. They have no consistency in governing MotoGP races. And Maddie had a very interesting tweet about this, or like an Instagram story as well. And she
Mm-hmm.
basically said it's ruining the product of MotoGP for Dorna. So that Dorna is in a situation where they can't do anything because the FIM governs MotoGP, which is a good thing that it's not Dorna who governs Dorna stuff. But they're fucking up so bad that it ruins the MotoGP product, which at the end of the day pulls money out of Dorna's pocket. Is this a good thing? No, it's a shitty thing. So yeah, that's one annoyed me a lot, and um, I would like to hear your thoughts on it.
Oh my god. I mean, s- if I ever see Freddie Spencer, I don't know what I'm going to be held responsible for. I'm going to knock that motherfucker out if I ever see him. I swear to God. I mean,
Give him a 3-piece and a soda.
I'm gonna give that man a 3-piece and something, Leo, because I cannot live like this anymore. I mean, Jorge Martin. Let's start with Jorge Martin and work our way up to the decision makers here. There are Japanese kamikaze fighters who would have been proud of that move. You cut across half the grid, okay? There's turn one incidents, and then there's cutting across the grid to try and get the inside line. You knew what you were doing, you cut across Maverick Vinales, and you wiped out half the grid, okay? That's a penalty on its own. The fact you don't even know that or won't admit that, that's a problem, okay? But that's not where my biggest issue is. First of all, with the stewards, there's two moving parts to this. One, the length of time that you take to recognize that that's a penalty is obscene, quite frankly. Within a lap, 2 laps at the most, should have been a notification below the screen saying Jorge Martin long lap penalty, Jorge Martin position demotion. Whatever the punishment is, I don't really care. Just have the courage to punish him when you know it's punishable. The fact they don't even do anything, Leo, is a problem to me. Because I mean, I swear to God, I could count on both hands and probably back again how many times I've had to talk about these useless ass stewards and Freddie Spencer for their incompetence and their negligence all season long. Like I said, there's a second moving part to this. The fact that you decide to apply the punishment in the race where he hasn't done anything wrong is as big a problem as not giving him a punishment in the beginning. Because now, not only is he not punished in the sprint race, he's punished in the race where there's more points available and he hasn't committed a crime. You know, it makes no sense to me, Leo. I have tried being calm about this. I've even tried defending the stewards. I know they don't have an easy job. I'm not saying it's a barrel of laughs being a MotoGP steward. I can't imagine it is. But come on already, people. You know, I'm sat 3, 4 thousand miles away, whatever it is, from Austria watching the race. And I know a penalty when I can see it. Why can't they? What are they seeing that we're not seeing? What are they being told that we're not being told? Is a chimp running the stewardship in these races? I am starting to think, Leo, that this is the case. There must be a monkey riding a unicycle wearing a fez that is ruling these races because there is no rational excuse for this. It is obscene and it is ridiculous. These stewards are ruining races, and like our good friend Maddie said, they are now ruining the product because of their negligence and their incompetence. For the love of God, people, please do something because I'm about to be like DMX because I'm about to lose my mind up in here, Leo.
Do you know what Alex Marquez said about the stewards? Remember when Jorge Martin took him out in the first lap of the American GP?
Mm-hmm.
And then he was wondering why is there no penalty. So
Mm-hmm.
then in Jerez, the next race, he was taken out, I believe, by Frankie in a sprint race, but I don't remember if it was Frankie or Fabio, one of the two, took Alex Marquez out. So the team sent the stewards an email where they protested and said, hey, this deserves to be a penalty. And they got a penalty instantly. So my thought is they actually don't know what they're doing. They're just looking at who cares and who doesn't care and who protests and who doesn't protest. Remember in Jerez where Jack Miller protested like Pecco Bagnaya's overtake and Pecco kind of said sorry, like where he turned around and waved his head like, okay, I apologize, I'm sorry. So they saw this and thought, okay, this was bad because both of the guys acknowledged it. There was something, so we have to give him a penalty. But when you don't complain, and my guess is that none of the people or none of the teams complained at the stewards, that this was the case why they didn't give a penalty. And also, Luca Marini, after his crash, he was quite calm and thought, okay, it is what it is. And this attitude basically told the stewards, okay, everything was fine because apparently he accepts the crash. And I think that then when they hop on Twitter and see the shitstorm, that they think, okay, something was wrong. We have to penalize this guy because they don't know what they're doing. They're just reacting to outside reactions and try to make everybody happy. But with this, they make nobody happy. And I would really like to see some rule set which is very, very clear, which is agreed on by the riders, that's agreed on by the manufacturers, and also agreed on by the governing parties, namely the FIM, Dorna, and IRTA. And now we have like a rule set where we can work with. And then we need some competent people who know how rules work, like a lawyer, for example. Like take a lawyer and take a racer and merge them into one person, and then you kind of have the perfect steward. And with this, where more or less everybody agrees on this rule set, we could apply those rules to races and say, okay, this one is this one, this one is this one, and this one is a penalty, this one is no penalty, this one is a harsher penalty. And then you can actually say why, because now they don't even explain it, which
Yeah,
is absolutely ridiculous. So I think there needs to be a change in the stewards because more or less every weekend we talk about them and it's ridiculous.
crackheads run the
Yeah.
stewardship, Leo. Sean O'Malley must be the chief steward of MotoGP. There is no other reason for what is going on. This is how ridiculous this is getting. You know, you are entrusted with the safety of the sport and applying the rules, and you can't even do that properly. That is a big, big, big problem for me as a fan, and I can't even imagine how upset the riders must be because they've got to go out and race under these ass hats who can't even apply the rules properly from above. I, I don't know. That I don't know.
The thing which annoys me the most at the end of the day, it takes money out of people's pockets. Because let's pretend you are a rider who competes for a championship. And then you're the victim of one of the stupid steward decisions. And now you get like a double long level whatsoever and lose 10 points. And those 10 points cost you at the end a championship position. I don't care if it's first or third or fifth whatsoever. But I'm very sure that sponsors don't look at why he's in P5. They just look at P5,
Yeah, they only
for
look.
example. They look
Sponsors
at the
don't care what
results.
position you're in. They only care what position you're in.
Yeah, and also like when we have a lot of silly season talk going on, like when you're a rider who's doing well, but then is like the victim of stupid steward decisions, it could be that you don't get promoted to a higher class or don't get the seat you wanted or whatsoever. So there's so much behind that you really have to be good with your decisions. It's like the same with stupid judging in MMA. Like you have a fighter who gets 50,000 to show and 50,000 to win, wins the fight, but the stupid judges give it to the other guy, so he's now 50,000 down, which is absolutely ridiculous. And like the same with MotoGP, I could imagine that you have people who get money per point or money per podium or money per win whatsoever, and yes, the good MotoGP riders like Marc Marquez and Fabio Quartararo, they don't have to worry about this stuff. But like let's say average MotoGP rider or like a Moto2 or Moto3 rider, it could really be beneficial for them to get this extra money because they aren't rich. I mean, Marc Marquez is rich, Fabio is rich, Aleix is rich, Maverick is rich, Pecco probably is rich. I don't know, but most of them aren't rich. I mean, I know what riders earn and what riders have to pay for. So it's absolutely ridiculous. Like when you have somebody who makes 500,000 a year, okay, cool, but they have to pay for their travel expenses themselves if they're in a bad team. They have to pay for all their training equipment and run through a couple of sets of tires by yourself, and then you know how much it costs. Then you have to pay for fuel, you have to pay for oil, you have to pay for your motorcycle when you crash, you have to pay for crash damage, you have to pay to get get to the track, you have to pay the track to train there. You have to pay for so many things if you aren't like a VR46 Academy rider, like a top-notch organization, or like Red Bull KTM factory racing. They are good at what they're doing, as far as I know. But still, I don't know if Brad Binder has to pay for his own training equipment or not. But you have to pay for so much, like a physiotherapist, or you have to pay for like a personal trainer, a mental coach. All of this stuff is paid for by the riders. So all of a sudden, those 500,000, then taxes go down, and then all of your expenses go down, and then what do you do after you finish your career? I mean, I think everybody who is very, very good at motorcycle racing should be able to make a living for the rest of their life at it, because they're like in the top 100 people on earth doing
Yeah.
this thing. But riders, it's like with the Sean Dillon Kelly situation. Riders get ripped off because of money all the time. And they are, at the end of the day, the people who get fucked, because there are so many riders who want to go to MotoGP, who want to go to Moto2, that the teams can afford to pay them less because somebody else will do it. But they are still the best in the world at something. Imagine you are like in the top 100 managers in the world, or you're in the top 100 lawyers of the world, or top 100 doctors of the world. You'd be fucking rich, but in MotoGP it's different, because they have the teams and the manufacturers, they have so much leverage over the riders that it's ridiculous. And yeah, to go back to the stewards, like this money matters. And if you have like bonuses taken away from you because of stewards over a season, over a career, it could really affect you. That's all I'm saying.
The stewards need to ban themselves.
like they did in Le Mans, like long lap for the stewards, where they were in the long lap area with the BMW X5 with the VIPs.
What we need to do is, we need to start punishing the stewards for every mistake they make and see how quickly that fixes it. Now, I don't know what kind of punishment we're going to give them, but you're going to help us think of it. Exactly, yeah. We're going to send Leo to every race and he's going to slap the dog shit out of the stewards for every mistake they make. Because we joke about it and we joke about their incompetence, but there are real world implications for this. People forget that, these riders, they're MotoGP riders and they're fortunate to get to do what they love for a living. But there are real consequences when the stewards keep messing up. And look, the occasional mistake I have no problem with. We all make them, but it's damn near every weekend for the same shit that we're talking about every single weekend. And that becomes inexcusable. That's where the line has to be drawn. And like you said, unless you're Mark Marquez or Fabio Quartararo or Pecco Bagnaia or Alicia Spargaro or one of the VR46 crew, you are pretty much fighting for every euro or every dollar, whatever currency it is isn't really the point. The point is you're pretty much fighting for everything you can get your hands on. Every podium matters, every win matters, every sprint race win might matter as well, especially if they renegotiate the contracts. The point is, we have to stop this and we've got to do something because it's becoming a real issue now. In fact, it's
Yeah,
not becoming an issue, it is an issue and it needs rooted out.
yeah. What do you think about John Zarco going to Honda?
I think it makes sense for Johan. He's getting a great contract, I'm sure. LCR will be paying him an obscene amount of money, which, hey, rolling in the Benjamins, playing La Marseillaise, you've earned your thing. Get your bag, Johan Zarco. I have no problem with that. From a competitive point of view, I mean, it's a step back. The Pramac bike is arguably the best seat on the grid. But Johan Zarco hasn't won a race. Franco Morbidelli maybe gets that Pramac seat now. You have the opportunity to go to Honda. You're a brilliant test rider who races. You get to develop that bike. Pray that Honda listen to you, which they probably won't because they're fucking idiots. But if they listen to you, you maybe make massive improvements in that Honda. And yeah, look, it could be a great move for Johan. It's a great retirement nest egg for him, and I don't begrudge him it one bit. He has given, how many crashes has he given to the grid? How many broken bikes has he been under? I have no problem with him making his bag, make your money, and then bounce out of the game whenever you're done. As far as competitiveness, yes, it's a step back, but he's a brilliant test rider, and if Honda have any sense, they'll listen to what he has to say. But I think for Pramac, this is a very exciting time now because you're going to recruit a rider who's going to win races on that bike.
Yeah, I think Frankie Morbidelli is criminally underrated because
I
of the Yamaha's
completely
lack
agree
of
with you.
performance. It's crazy what people say about him. They forget how incredibly good Frankie is. And I love Frankie to death. The the dude is so cool. Did you see the interview he did with
Yes.
like Appleyard, where he's
Yes.
like, "Yeah, Vale said it all, and basically you have to relax, and everything will settle down in a while." He has this confidence about him, or like the Mugello interview, like, "Do I want to stay with Yamaha?"
Yeah,
It's
exactly. You have
so
to ask
cool.
Lynn, do I want to stay?
Yeah, it's so incredibly cool what Frankie is doing, and he has this chill vibe that it's so nice. Like, you don't get a lot of personality out of MotoGP riders; they're just PR trained machines.
Mm-hmm.
But Frankie still manages to do it in such a cool way that he's not like Jake Dixon being utterly ridiculous, but he's just so cool, and I love it. I mean, and his confidence says me more than what he's actually saying, because, like, do you want to stay with Yamaha? It's like, yes, I know you have a seat. I mean, come on, stop bullshitting me. But like, then Paolo Ciabatti said publicly during the Silverstone weekend, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
that Frankie is an interesting rider. They would be happy to have a rider of his capabilities, but there's still no official announcement, and like everybody knows. And now that I always thought he might go to VR46 and Bezecchi will go to Pramac because he wants this factory bike, but apparently Rossi convinced him to stay, which is, in my opinion, a good thing. Like, the
Mm-hmm.
GP23 he's getting next year is a significant improvement over the GP22.
It
Remember
is.
this? Pecco
Yes.
didn't even want to race this. He wanted to have the old engine. And the GP23 is a refined motorcycle by then. They know what they're getting. They know what setups Pecco and Enea and Jorge Martin and John Zarco ran, and they know how to adapt to a bike. And then with Pramac, they get Frankie, who's such an experienced rider, and I think he can be really valuable to Ducati in this department because he's getting the factory bike and he should be able to tell what's good and what's bad about it. And probably he doesn't have a lot of bad things to say because he's coming from a Yamaha, so it's all about perspective. Um, I guess Pecco doesn't know how good he has it at Ducati. So when he's telling the bike is too stable, Frankie will basically slap him. So yeah, I mean, I think that it's a great place for Bizecchi to develop as a rider, and also a great place for Frankie to be, because he gets the best bike on the grid at the best seat. Like, he has all the factory benefits, but doesn't have to do all the factory responsibilities, which is nice. And I think he will be very good. I mean, I believe he'll be better than Alex Marquez. I think Frankie is a better rider than Alex Marquez is.
There is such little doubt in my mind that Morbidelli's a better rider. I think there is no question of this whatsoever. I mean, first of all, you're right. Going from a Yamaha to a Pramax, like going from a Lada to an Audi R8. So he's loving life at the moment as well. He should. He's had a rough couple of years. I'm really happy for Frankie. But the Ducati situation is working out perfectly. It is working out perfectly. Rossi gets his boys to stay together, who are a great team. They work really well together, Marini and Bezecchi. They have the old bike, and they've had all the work done for them. They've developed the bike for you. All you got to do is go out, ride the bike with all the data on it, and compete for wins. It's a perfect fit for them. As for Franco, he gets to go to Pramac, which I think is arguably the best seat on the paddock, or in the paddock out of any bike. You know, he gets to go there. The vibes are just outrageous with Franco Morbidelli. I mean, the vibes are unreal. Every time I see Franco Morbidelli, I just think of like Jim Morrison or Jimi Hendrix. He's just got that old spirit about him, and I think that's really cool. And look, he gets to go to Pramac, he gets a factory bike, and watch the damage he's going to do on that. You know
I
what?
think
I'm actually going to make a bold prediction here. I'm the We are only like about halfway through this season. I'm making a bold prediction for 2024. Franco Morbidelli competes for the title on a Pramac.
I think it
I'm
will be a
calling it.
little bit. I think it will be a little bit more difficult because he has to adapt everything. I mean, the last time he has ridden a V4 was in 2018, a Honda at Mark VDS. So since 2019, he rode an inline 4 Yamaha. And I think he really has to adapt his riding style a lot, and has to learn quite a few things about aerodynamics and how to really position the bike, because Yamaha is so far behind in this department. They still have the same aero as they had in 2019 up until Silverstone. I believe they changed it. Same with Honda. And I really believe he needs time to adapt. But when he adapts, more or less like Alex Marquez. Alex Marquez took more or less half the season to adapt, and now he's finally there where you see, okay, he's good.
I think Franco's going to blow a lot of people away, and I think you're going to see 2020 Morbidelli again. Actually, that's how good I think Franco Morbidelli is. And I actually want to come back to something. The podcast that you did with Jacob from Now Moto News, I want to say I completely agreed with the point you made. Franco Morbidelli is the most under-respected and underappreciated rider on the grid. I am totally on your side on this. People forget how amazing he was in 2020, and but for an engine blowout in Brno in the Czech Republic, he would have been world champion.
It
He
was in Jerez, and Bruno, he finished second behind Brett Binder.
Oh, was it her? Right, sorry, yes, it was in Jerez. But for that engine blowout, he wins that championship, and that's how good of a rider we're talking about here. I think if you see Morbidelli in a Pramac, you are going to see something truly special.
Yeah. What's crazy to me is that KTM has this weird situation going on right now where Paul Espargaro and Jack Miller say, hey, I have a contract for next year. There's nothing to worry about. Augusto Fernandez comes out and says, I'll stay with Tech 3 for another year. So what's going on? Will Pedro get the Gresini seat now or what?
I am glad I'm not Pit Byrer. I am
Yeah,
really
because
glad.
you still can walk. So that's a
Oh,
nice thing.
fucking hell, Leo. I didn't say that. I didn't say that. Oh God. Oh God, we are going to hell. We are going to the depths. No, I'm glad I'm not pit by her, and no, not for that reason. No, I'm glad I'm not pit by her because he does have some very difficult decisions on the horizon. You know, you like you said, you have Augusto Fernandez who is sticking with his contract. You
No,
have
no, he
Brad.
has a 1 year contract, so he's told he will stay with Tech 3,
Yeah.
but he actually just has a contract for this year.
Okay, so we have that situation with Augusto. We have Jack Miller, who has a 2-year contract. You have Brad Binder, who's going nowhere, obviously. And then
Has a
you have
contract until the end of 2026, so
exactly. And then you have Paul Espargaro, who's come out and said he's staying as well. So what do you do? I'm gonna be completely honest here. And I actually saw your post on this, and you're right. You know, someone's going to get hurt badly out of this because you can't let Pedro Acosta walk away. No, I did not mean that. That just happened. I wasn't making a joke. I wasn't trying to be funny, and I wasn't trying to be clever. No, you can't let Pedro Acosta go to Grassini. Whatever happens, you cannot let your star asset walk away from this. He's too good to let walk away. So I think what you do is I think you let Jack go. And I think you let Pedro go into the factory team alongside Brad Binder. And I'm going to tell you why I think that there is actually a good reason behind this. The problem is that I love Jack Miller. I absolutely love the guy. I think he's one of the hardest working riders in the grid. And I think he's a great example of what to look up to. The problem is that in every race, he starts well and goes backwards, whereas Brad Binder starts the same but ends up going forwards. And Jack keeps holding up the rest of the grid as well. You know, he's not able to get positions back after he's been overtaken. And I think if you have someone like Pedro Acosta, who is going to command a factory seat wherever he goes, unless it's Ducati, you have to make that sacrifice. And I think it's going to be Jack Miller that's the sacrificial lamb.
I mean, I have a theory, and I I didn't speak with Remy or Pedro about it, so this is just 100% speculation. Remy and Pedro are very good friends. They spent a day on a boat together during the summer break, and
That's right.
they are good friends. And Remy has been done dirty by KTM,
Very
and
true.
especially by Tech 3 and Henry Porchera.
Mm-hmm.
And he has nothing good to say about Tech 3. And
Understandably.
if he says it to me, he will say it to Pedro, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So my theory is that Pedro is pushing for a factory seat because he doesn't want to go there in this shithole named Tech 3.
Agreed.
And that one leaves Jack Miller out. But then again, you can't really sack Jack Miller because he's utterly popular. And yes, he isn't very good towards the end of a race, but he had like one bad race and all of a sudden he's shit. No, he's still a very good rider who can fight for podiums. He won races in MotoGP. He won races on 2 different bikes. I mean, he still could be the first rider who wins on 3 different bikes. So I believe that Jack Miller is very, very valuable for MotoGP because he's Australian. He's
Mm-hmm.
very valuable to KTM because he has a boatload of experience. And he's still a good rider. Let's not pretend he's bad. Paul Espargaro was like the odd man out because of his injury. And there were a lot of speculations that he might retire or go into a test rider role. But I believe with the results he's putting up at the moment, he will stay because he's a hardhead. I mean, he has a family at home. He has a wonderful wife with wonderful children, and everything is good for him. He has money, and he doesn't need to potentially injure himself or kill himself or whatsoever. I mean, this thing in Portimao could have gone sideways very, 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 very easily. I mean,
It nearly did.
the bike hit him in the air fence, and that's the way Luis Salom passed away. So that was very, very dangerous, and he was very, very lucky that he escaped this alive. So is it really worth it? But then again, he's a hardhead. He wants to prove that Honda was the problem and not him. So, and he's doing it at the moment because he's doing better results than Augusto is. Yes, Augusto is a rookie, but still both are in their first season on the KTM together, even though Paul had a lot of experience there. So, and they love Paul. And I really believe that KTM are loyal to Paul. And if Paul wants to race next year, he will race, which leaves Augusto as the odd man out. And I mean this with the most respect towards Augusto Fernandez. We don't need another Spanish rider on the grid. He
Brutal, but
isn't
true.
as, like, forget on-track performance for a second. He isn't as markable as Jack Miller. He isn't as popular as Jack Miller, and he simply doesn't have the value Jack Miller has. And
True.
then put on that Jack Miller is, at the moment at least, a better rider.
Yeah.
So, and Jack Miller came with all the Ducati engineers. Jack Miller has a contract, so KTM kind of owe him, because it would be really dirty to give him a 2-year contract, get all the knowledge from Ducati, and then sack him. Would be very dirty, but then again, it's KTM we're talking about. So my theory at the moment is Brad and Pedro in the factory team, and Jack and Paul as a development team in Tech 3. And Augusto is the odd one out because he has no contract for next year. And he doesn't provide the value to the sport that Jack Miller provides.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense.
That's like my opinion about it when you consider also the business side of the sport.
Yeah, I agree. And look, I don't believe in letting Jack Miller go. I just think if you're looking at it as a cold-hearted SOB and looking at the results, you don't get rid of Brad Binder.
No.
Paul was back this weekend. I know he was back the race before, but he was back this weekend and he finished better than his brother. And Augusto, I mean, to be fair, Tech 3 have a record of effing over rookies, so it wouldn't shock me if Augusto was the odd man out. The only thing is, as long as you can convince Jack to take a step down to Tech 3 and wear red instead of orange, then by all means, that works out really, really great. You have 4 really strong riders for KTM. You've got youth, you have experience. I think absolutely that would work.
The thing is, the ceiling of Jack Miller is Jack Miller at the moment. He can win, like on the best bike on the grid last year on the Ducati. He won 1 race in Motegi, I believe. I don't know if he won multiple races, but
I think he
was
may
like,
have won 2, but I know he won 1.
He definitely won 2 in. Oh, was he? No, he was winning in Le Mans and in Jerez, but this was 2021, I believe.
I'll check actually, because
And in
I'd like to
22, he won. Yeah, basically, while you check, I will elaborate on my point because it's not important how many races or how many podiums he's got. His ceiling is win a race or 2 or 3 within a season and finish on the podium a couple times this season. That's like basically his ceiling, what he showed. Augusto Fernandez' ceiling, we don't know yet. He's a world champion in Moto2. That's something Jack Miller never achieved. And his ceiling could potentially be a lot higher than Jack Miller's ceiling. With Paul, we more or less have the same thing as Jack Miller, except he's like a step further behind because he has not been capable to win up until now. And he can finish on the podium and he can do stuff, but it's not like Paul will win a world championship. So I believe it's very important that you know where you are with those 2 riders. And I also believe that you have to take all the development aspect into consideration because KTM has no shortage of young riders who are very talented. They can pull them out of their arse as many as they want, quite frankly. And I mean, look at Moto 3 at the moment. You have Dennis Earnshaw and Danny Olgado and Jose Antonio Rueda. I mean, in Moto 2, you have Pedro Acosta, and I mean, Albert Arenas isn't doing shit, but I don't know who will replace Pedro. I believe that Dennis Öncü will go to Moto 2. So sooner or later, you have a very good rider by yourself out of your own developmental program. So I think KTM is in no position where they need a lot of fast riders because they already have Brad Binder and Pedro Acosta. They
Hmm.
need riders who are consistent and good at developing the bike. And I think Jack Miller and Paul Espargaro can be very good at developing the bike for them.
Yeah.
And I also think that Brad Binder and Pedro Acosta can be fast and consistent for them and
Hmm.
also add value for the development part. Maybe KTM will get 6 bikes sooner or later, but it will definitely not be next season.
Sorry, I just wanted to
So,
say real quickly, you were right. Jack Miller won once last season. That was in Japan.
okay. And 2 times in 2021 then
That's
in
right,
Jerez
yes.
and Le Mans. Okay. So, yeah, that's basically my point. You know where Jack Miller's ceiling is. You know where Paul Espargaro's ceiling is. You don't know where Pedro's ceiling is. You don't know necessarily where Brad Binder's ceiling is because the bike hasn't been competitive up until this season for him. And
Hmm.
he's still missing a little bit on the Ducatis on the KTM. So, and also with Jack Miller, I believe it's a bit harsh to shit on him for not being able to hold the pace consistently on the bike where he has been riding for 10 races on. So give the man a little bit of time to figure it out, and then I believe it would be harsh to sack him again after half a season. And with Augusto Fernandez, it looks like he's the odd man out. He isn't the super talent Pedro Acosta is. He isn't the super marketable guy that Jack Miller is. He isn't the developmental guy that Paul Espargaro is. So it's again a very disgusting situation to promote a Moto 2 world champion to MotoGP, give him a 1 year contract. And he's good. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's doing very, very good and just second. But one has to go, and who it will be, I don't know. But my guess is, as I elaborated, Jack Miller and Paul Espargaro in Tech 3, and Brad Binder and Pedro Acosta in KTM Factory Racing.
Well, listen, that would be a hell of a lineup. And if I was pit buyer, I would be very happy having those four on KTMs next season. I think with Augusto Fernandez, look, like you said, somebody's getting hurt out of this. It's just how you minimize the bleeding. And I do think when you balance everything, I think with Augusto, yeah, he's a rookie. And I think if he was on it next season, he would be better. But I think having that experience in Tech 3 and that youth in the factory team, I think that's just too good a combination to pass up. So I'm probably in agreement with that.
I'm very interested in what Ogura will do because he won't go to MotoGP with LCR, I believe. I believe or I've heard he's very unhappy with Honda in general and also the Honda Team Asia thing. So, what if he goes, for example, to Ayo and they pair him with Dennis Enchu?
It's a hell of a pairing. I mean, I'm
And
sorry.
yes, and I believe that Daniel Olgado will go to Gasgas in Moto 2 because he has a history with the team
Mm-hmm.
in Junior World Championship, and I believe Jake Dixon will go to Gresini.
That's not a bad prediction at all. I mean, I've been very high on Iagora for at least 3 or 4 seasons now, as you know. I think he's a great rider. I think one more good season in Moto 2 could break him into MotoGP. I think Nakagami is not going to last much longer. And MotoGP obviously wants an Asian rider in the class to represent the huge Asian market for motorcycles. So I think Iagora is the perfect replacement. It's just really where you fit him in. To be honest, I this is the first time hearing about Iagora having issues with Honda and with Team Asia, so perhaps you wouldn't mind elaborating on that a little bit. But if he'd been willing to go, then that would have solved everybody's problems.
I mean, I talked with somebody, and this somebody told me that Iogura isn't happy with Honda at the moment
Okay,
and wants to get the fuck out of there. I, as everybody knows, he turned down the LCR seat last season
that's
because
right.
he said, fuck this one. And then I I questioned if a Japanese rider brings the same value to a European factory as to an Asian factory, where I'm thinking, no, but this person said he will have a very big value for them. So, and then thinking about it, like Ducati isn't selling a lot in Asia. Ducati has a very good lineup in riders. So KTM kind of makes sense because they have the small bikes there. And if they put him on a IO, I mean, Albert Arenas isn't performing at all. Pedro Acosta will go to MotoGP. IO has a history of pairing a rookie with the experienced rider. They did it with Raul and Remy. They did
Mm-hmm.
it with Pedro and Augusto. And yeah, now they're kind of doing it with Pedro and Albert Arenas, even though Pedro has more experience than Raul and he himself had last season, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But I could definitely see them promoting Dennis Öncü, and they will definitely promote Dennis Öncü. That, in my opinion, was the reason behind this whole switch from Tech 3 to Ayo and then Olgado to Tech 3, because otherwise I thought it would be stupid.
Yeah, there'd be no
And
point otherwise.
yeah, so I think Ayo would make sense for Ogura, and Ogura would make sense for KTM. But then again, you have to question yourself: how do you bring him up to MotoGP? Do you replace Paul Espargaro in 2025 with Ayogura? But yeah, that's a whole different discussion. What will happen in 2025? Because then everybody will be like a free agent. Mark Marquez will be a free agent. Fabio will be a free agent. Joan Mir will be a free agent. All of those people, and I think a lot of things will change in 2025. But
Mm-hmm.
2024 will be very interesting because I think Mark Marquez is staying. I think Joan Mir is staying. Fabio is staying. And potentially, Aleix Espargaro could retire after next season.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm always thinking about the business side of the sport, because like with Jake Dixon, is Jake Dixon better than Tony Arbolino? No. But he adds more value to MotoGP than another Italian rider does. So at one point, do we think, okay, where do we have good riders in Moto2 who deserve, or more or less deserve, or are capable of riding a MotoGP bike, without putting just another Spaniard on there, another Italian? When do we start to put Philip Salaj and Somkya Chandra, Ayogura, those people in the MotoGP who are very, very good riders? I mean, nobody would argue that they don't deserve to be there, but maybe they aren't better than Tony Arbolino, for example. But then do we need another Italian rider on the grid? That's like a very, very interesting thing to consider, because Jake Dixon is getting the MotoGP seat because he is British, not because he's better than Tony Arbolino.
Yeah, listen, positive discrimination works in a bunch of different ways, and it's unfortunate for Tony Arbolino that there's so many great Italians in MotoGP. It's unfortunate for the Spanish riders that there's already so many great Spaniards in MotoGP, but you can't have it becoming the European World Championship, otherwise nobody would watch it. Now, am I saying Jake Dixon deserves the MotoGP seat? No, I am not. I don't think he does deserve it. I give him credit for winning the race. I thought it was a great performance, but one win doesn't merit a MotoGP seat, and that's just a fact. The problem is there's no other good British riders. There's no good Irish riders. I mean, being Irish, obviously, I'd love an Irish rider in the Premier class, but we just don't have them. And so when it comes to representation in a big market, you're forced to turn to riders like Jake Dixon, who, with the very utmost of respect, are average at best, who can pull out the occasional win, and you have to promote them because there is nobody else. Cal Crutchlow deserved it because Cal was a real workhorse, and he did win occasionally with LCR. Not with Ducati, but he did still work hard with Ducati. But
With Cal Crutchlow, you have to think where he came from, not what he achieved, because we don't know what Jake Dixon will achieve in MotoGP. We just know the state where he was previously. And on record, Cal Crutchlow, I believe, won like a SSP championship,
Mm-hmm.
and then or races. I don't know. Uh, and then went to World Superbike for a season, I believe, and then went to Tech 3 Yamaha, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the way. And I think then he became great. So who says Jake Dixon doesn't do the same and be a multiple time race winner in MotoGP? Could be possible. So it's difficult, in my opinion, to compare somebody like Cal Crutchlow, who achieved a lot in MotoGP, with somebody who never had the opportunity to compete in MotoGP. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that is very true, and I take your point. But my problem with Jake Dixon is that he hasn't even shown signs of it in Moto 2. That's where my problem is. If Jake Dixon had won multiple races in Moto 2 and had multiple podiums, we're having a very different conversation. The problem is, and again, this is harking back to your episode with Now Moto News, the British media have a vested interest in having a British rider in the paddock. TNT Sports interview with Jake. We won't get into all of that because you did a great job of that already with Jacob. But there has to be representation from my part of the world, unfortunately, one way or the other. It just happens to be that the one rider who can do it doesn't necessarily deserve it, unfortunately. But that's just the way it works. Unfortunately, if you don't invest in UK and Irish racing, this is kind of what you get. You get someone who was in British Superbike, went to Moto 2, and now has to go up to MotoGP because you can't have another Spaniard or another Italian doing it. So, and I want to be clear about this as well because I know people might misconstrue this. I have nothing against Jake Dixon. I like Jake. I think he's a nice guy, and I thought his interview was really bloody funny, and I thought the passion was really good to see. But on merit, we all know he doesn't deserve this seat. He's not the next Cal Crutchlow or the next Barry Sheen who's going to fly the flag, so to speak. He's going to be there because of his passport and because just to maintain a bike audience in the UK. That's all it's for. But at least be honest about it.
I mean, we had Darren Binder in MotoGP, so don't be too harsh on Jake for not having the credentials to go to MotoGP.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the whole credibility argument kind of went to shit the day or Darren Bender went straight up to MotoGP. So who the hell am I to judge anybody? I'm not going to sit here and tear holes in Jake Dixon for getting the dream chance to ride for Grassini. I'm not going to lambast him for that. But let's just be truthful here. Sean Dillon Kelly can't even stay in an American team when he's an American. I'm sure we'll get on to that in a minute. I mean, there are riders who are getting these spots that don't deserve them. There are riders who should be in spots that do deserve them but aren't getting them. The whole thing's out of balance.
Yeah, and we talked about like Sean Dillon Kelly, and I talked about it a lot with Jacob on the Now Motor News episode I did. So if you want to know what's going on with Sean Dillon Kelly, short, he's not injured. It's just political stuff I'm not allowed to tell you. And yeah, there's things going on which had nothing to do with his injury. He's sacked mid-season for Marcos Ramirez, and if you're not stupid, you know why he's replaced. If it's not his injury, then something else might be it. And talking about like the American world, why isn't there like a Moto 3 series inside of Moto America who promotes young American talent into the Junior GP World Championship? I mean, this would be the way to go, like they do with the Asian Talent Cup.
Because Dorna doesn't give a shit. That's it. Dorna,
I mean,
they haven't made any effort.
They gave enough of a shit to put in an effort to bring American riders over there. I would assume Dorna is very happy that American riders were on the grid. And I mean, Joe Roberts got a MotoGP opportunity with Aprilia, but turned it down because he thought he would get something better.
Yeah,
and
true.
now he looks like the stupidest man on earth because he turned down an Aprilia in 2020, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And now Aprilia is arguably the second best bike on the grid.
Yeah. He's also had an Idle-Trans seat that he probably doesn't deserve either. I mean, he's been less than spectacular on it.
I mean, the best thing Joe Roberts ever did was crashing in the lead with a 3 second lead in Catalonia. I mean,
Yeah, I mean that was pretty funny to be fair, but I mean when it comes to the sort of UK and the US scene, the problem with Dorna is that it's too much effort. And I'm not even saying that as a criticism of Dorna. You know, to invest in US racing where the tracks are awful. The tracks are terrible over there.
but they're racing superbikes on there. They're racing 300 supersport bikes on there. Why not a Moto 3? I mean, it's not that difficult to
It
give them like
isn't.
a Red Bull Rookies Cup situation where you have everybody has the same bike, just go out and race.
Yeah, exactly. But that would require intelligence and outside thinking. And
And
Dorna,
money.
yeah, and Dorna obviously aren't capable of committing it. You know, I mean, to be fair, right, with this whole US argument, we can sit here and argue about this till the cows come home. But we've seen the way American racing team have treated one of their own already this week. And what is the point in bothering if this is all that's going to happen? It's an American racing team, and they threw him out for a Spanish rider. I mean, people connect the dots here.
I mean, we have North America and South America, and one part gets colonized by the British, aka Rory Skinner. The other part gets colonized by the Spaniards, aka Marcos Ramirez. So history is repeating itself here. So I don't know why we didn't think of this earlier. So it's like the natural thing what happens with America and American racing.
But the problem,
So
the problem that we have now, and I'll just make this point really quickly. The problem that the motorcycle world has now is that F1 and Liberty Media are encroaching on the American market, and they are investing hugely in it because they know that there's like, I don't know what, 300 million people that live in North America. The audience that is there and the talent that is going to feed F1 in the next 20, 30 years from watching the Las Vegas race, the Miami race, you are going to see some of the best racers in the world in 20 years from F1 from the United States and probably Canada as well. What's MotoGP going to have? It's going to have nothing because there is no investment in North America, and North America won't invest in itself. So we're stuck in a never ending cycle of guys that aren't coming over, aren't making an impact in the paddock, and there's no American representation, and there's not good enough UK or Irish representation. And then it goes back in a cycle of being the Italian and Spanish and occasionally Portuguese Grand Prix, and nobody watches it outside of Europe again. And that's why.
I mean, we have a situation with Casey O'Gorman, who is a
Shout out Casey.
very talented Irish rider. But I don't know what's going on with him. I mean, he had the Vision Track seat, and apparently this was sponsored by Dorna. And now he went away because apparently his dad wasn't happy with Vision Track. So, I mean, this is all speculation. I don't know for a fact. So, I'm just, it's just a little bit he said, she said. So, yeah, now he's in this weird Spanish team. And I read an announcement that he's going to BSB on the 600. So I don't know what's going on there, if he will continue to race in the Rookies Cup or whatsoever. But it would be a shame to lose somebody like Casey. It would be a shame to lose somebody like Sean Dillon Kelly. I hope Sean will find something because he teased something like an announcement soon. But I don't know what this announcement will. Honestly, I don't know. I haven't talked to him. I just suggested that he changes his American racing livery on his mini bike to a bad MotoGP racing livery. I think this would be fun.
We'll raise
But
the money and start our own team.
yeah, I don't know. And honestly, Colin Vire impressed me so much. I could
Oof.
definitely see him going all the way. And remember, he's a tall fella. I talked with him quite a lot in Assen during the World Superbike race and in Jerez last year. So he's very tall when you compare him, for example, to a Joel Kelso or Pedro Acosta. Those two are midgets. So, and you have to be in Moto 3, let's be honest. And if he goes to a Moto 2 team sooner or later, I believe he will only get better. And then with his Dutch passport and the results he's getting in his rookie season, I mean, look at David Alonso and look at Colin Vaya. Both of them were not as good as Jose Antonio Rueda in the Junior GP series for different reasons. And now they are everything that we thought Jose Antonio Rueda would be. I mean, I remember in the preseason episode, I talked about Jose Antonio Rueda winning the occasional race and being in competition for the podium. But this is what we saw from David Alonso, and this is what we saw from Colin Vaya now. I mean, Colin is making huge steps, and I'm very, very happy to see it. I mean, races like Silverstone, he was very good, but then fucked it up, and now he was very good again and didn't fuck it up, but just only P4. So the podium will come eventually, I think, and I really believe he has a bright future ahead. So, like the whole international thing could be done better, but when you consider David Alonso is officially Colombian, even though he was born in Madrid, so but he has this Colombian passport. So this could be a nice thing as well for MotoGP, if we at least pretend that we have riders from all over the world.
Yeah, who said multiculturalism was dead, eh?
I mean, Diogo Moreira was born in Brazil, I believe, but moved to Spain quite early to pursue his MotoGP or motorcycle racing career.
Mm-hmm.
So we could look at a Brazilian, even though I expected a little bit more out of him this season.
Yeah, so did I.
But yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, I really hope that we will solve this whole issue sooner or later, and I hope that Dorna does something to promote America, because you made a phenomenal point with F1. I mean, they are doing everything right at the moment. Formula One is exceptionally well managed,
And I
and is
hate F1, but they are light years ahead of MotoGP.
yeah. And the thing which annoys me, MotoGP was at a point in the early 2010s where they were more popular all around the world than Formula One was. When you consider Instagram followers and Facebook followers and all of this stuff, MotoGP was ahead, but the mismanagement is so crazy, and the Formula One is doing all the right things and investing big into the future, while Dorna is introducing sprint races to make the quick buck, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's genuinely startling the mismanagement that's been had over the last 10, 15 years even, because like you said, when we had peak Rossi Lorenzo era, the Alien era, MotoGP was years ahead of F1. You know, F1 was still suffering from like Schumacher syndrome and Jensen Button and guys like that who were trying to compete with him. But MotoGP had the best action that you could watch anywhere in any motorsport. World Rally Championship, F1, Supercross, MotoGP was the place to be. And ladies and gentlemen, if you don't believe me or you don't believe what I'm saying, go watch Catalonia 2009. Go watch those old races and look at how many people are in the stands at those races. Everybody wanted a ticket to the hottest show in town because the hottest show was MotoGP. And over the last 10, 15 years, it has been such a role reversal. It's actually quite scary. If we consider a graph, the growth and the decline have been inversely proportional. MotoGP has gone down, F1 has boomed, and that's because Liberty Media, to their credit, even though I don't like F1, that's because Liberty Media have been very, very clever and they've been ruthless in their analysis. They knew Verstappen and Hamilton would be big TV all over the world. They had every camera in the world on it. They knew the US was the place to invest. They've made a street race in Las Vegas, of all places. That's about as classy as hanging out with Floyd Mayweather, but they did it. MotoGP is never going to think like that with Carmelo Ezpeleta at the top. It just isn't.
Yeah. I really hope you enjoyed this different episode about MotoGP at the moment. I hope next race in Misano, I believe, or is it Catalonia, the next one?
I think it's Catalonia.
Is it next week or this week, or is it
I
the week after?
think it's this. No, it might actually be next week. Just let me check.
Okay. Yeah, I hope we will have more action there, more to discuss there, and certainly I won't attend the race live, so we have a different approach to the podcast.
It's
I
next
hope
week.
you Oh, it's next. So not this weekend, the weekend after.
Yep, next weekend, September 3rd, Catalonia,
Okay,
Barcelona.
perfect. Okay, so yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope next time in Catalonia we will have more action to discuss. I mean, Red Bull Ring is quite simple. Pecco was better than faster and faster than everybody, so it is what it is. Brad Binder was second, better than faster, better and faster than everybody except Pecco. And yeah, then we had the P3 thing. So I mean, I hope we have some more action there. I hope we have some more news there. What's going on with the MotoGP seats? And see you, everybody, and goodbye. Why isn't stopping? Failed to stop recording. So I guess we're still here because this stupid